in this video I'm going to be chatting all about my favorite watercolor paper, which is by Legion. The brand is Legion and the actual paper name is Stonehenge Aqua. I prefer to use cold pressed paper versus hot pressed. If you are kind of a newbie to watercolor papers, you're gonna see when you walk into an art supply store, you're gonna see things that are called or labeled hot press paper, you'll see rough paper, and you'll see cold press paper. And basically, long story short, hot press paper is smooth while cold press paper has a texture to it, has a nice toothy texture to it, and then rough paper is extra textured. I prefer to work on cold press paper, especially with a high quality paper. It's got a really nice texture, but it's not too intense like a rough paper would be. The reason why I don't use a smooth paper versus cold press, so hot press versus cold press paper, is that toothy texture on a cold press paper helps hold the pigment and water in place while it's drying. So if you're working on hot press paper, you just have to have more patience in making sure colors are staying blended, or it's not moving around, or not getting hard lines drying around the edges, etc. So you have to continually watch what is being painted on the paper and make sure it stays mixed or it's not drying funky. While with cold press, you don't have to do that as often because that texture is what holds it all in place, makes it all stay pretty and nice. I paint on a block of watercolor paper. So in this sheet, I believe there's 15 sheets of paper, and it's glued on the two long sides. So Arches or Arch, however you want to say it, Fabriano, all the big brand names of watercolor paper have blocks available as well, and they'll be glued down on two or three sides. This particular block is glued on the two long sides. And the reason for that is so that the top sheet, the sheet that you're working on, stays flat until it dries, and then you can lift it off or tear with a canvas bone, a knife, or your finger by lifting it up. And the reason for that is so that it doesn't buckle. If you add water to paper, it's going to warp and buckle, and that makes for hills and valleys in your watercolor paper, which pushes all your water and pigment down into those valleys and makes for really dense and saturated color in certain areas, but then in other areas, it's just gonna look weird. So you wanna make sure that your paper stays flat. If you're working on loose sheets of paper, I'll use artist tape, that blue painter's tape, and tape down all four sides on a piece of cardboard so I can shift it around or something like that. But I love this block of watercolor paper. It's really reasonably priced compared to its other competitors. And it's great. It's really high quality paper. I used to use Fabriano paper before this and love Fabriano, but this is a better price point. So if you want to check it out, the link is below for this specific pad of paper, block of paper, along with what I just mentioned about it. It's 9 by 12 inches, which is a great size. My scanner bed is 9 by 12, so it's the perfect size for when I'm digitizing my artwork. It's also 100% cotton, so saving the trees. 100% cotton. It's white, bright white color, which I really like against the saturated and vibrant colors that I use, acid-free, and it's 140 pounds. So the thickness of the paper is pretty important. Anything that's lower than 140 pounds or less than 300 GSM, 140 pounds, is generally too thin for the amount of water that I work with, and it will typically warp it and buckle it no matter what. So try to stick around the 140 pounds or thicker type of paper. I don't use thicker paper than 140 because I find it unnecessary for what I do. Most of my work is digitized, so I don't need a thicker paper for any reason, and it doesn't, to me, add any sort of visual value. So those are the main features of Legion Stonehenge Aqua cold press paper. They have tons of other fun papers in their lines of papers. They have a black watercolor paper, really fascinating and fun to work with as well. It's awesome and I love it, and it's great for lifting color. So if you make a little boo-boo or mistake, you can grab a paper towel or a dry brush and lift it off, and it lifts super easily and really well. Check it out. The link to this specific block is in the description below. Let me know if you liked this video, and if you've tried this paper before, I would love to hear your thoughts on it in the comments below. Or if you haven't tried it, let me know if you're excited to try it or what type of paper you love to use if you're a watercolorist. Make sure to check out all the other supply videos that we have available on this channel. I have already talked about my brushes and I talk about my paint on here as well, so make sure you check those out if you're wanting to look into the exact supplies that I use and why I use them, etc. Thanks for watching.